The weep hole is right here. Make sure that's down. Hey guys, how you doing? We're back at it again today, and I spent most of the day working on the truck or doing research on working on the truck, and I just want to say that I'm in a much better place today, and hopefully we're going to start making some more noticeable progress. So the first thing I want to do is just talk to you guys a little bit about that piece I showed you that I stripped everything out on, and then I'll show you what I got done today. And so like I said, I know somebody who's a mechanic. He's a second generation mechanic, and he's nice enough to answer questions for me once in a while. So I took this piece down to him, and I was honest, and I told him I was spinning the bolts in the hole, because I'm sure I explained to you guys what I did. We don't need to go through that again, but I always treat mechanics like doctors. You don't lie to mechanics. You just tell them the truth, and hopefully they're professional enough not to make fun of you. And I know I was joking with him, and I said, you guys are welcome to make as much fun of me once I leave the shop, but please don't make fun of me now. And he basically said, we make mistakes every day, John. So it was just very refreshing to hear the pros say, don't beat yourself up over it. But what he did is he got a tap and die set, and I learned a lot about tap and dies, and I guess it's time I get a tap and die set and get practicing with one. But he used something called a taper tap, which has a longer point on it, so it's easier to catch the threads, that are tough to start. Because basically what happened was the first 2 or 3 threads I had messed up, but once you get it in there, it was biting. So he took the taper tap and he went through them all, and it was fun watching him. He just kept it parallel, didn't force anything, and didn't rush anything either. And he cleaned everything up, and then he went to a back room and came out with these bolts, which are M6 by 1.0 by 10 millimeters, so they don't need to be cut. So that's all solved. So basically this piece is cleaned up. And the one thing I learned, and I know you guys that do this all the time know, is there's actually 3 different types of taps. There's like a regular tap, which is called a plug tap, which has, I think it's something like 3 to 5 threads to engage with what's there, like the taper. There's this taper tap, which I think has something like 5 to 8 threads. It's got like a longer taper on the end of it, so it can catch the threads a little easier. And then you've got something called a butt tap, which only has like 2 or 3 thread taper, so if you have a hole into something that you need to tap out, you would use this butt tap to make it, as far in as possible. So there could be situations if you've got like a thick piece of metal where you use a taper tap to get the hole started, the plug tap to go down the most of the hole, then you switch to the butt tap to do the bottom of the hole. I did bring this to ask him if this was the right tool to use, and the thing about this is, I don't know if you guys can see, let me get a bigger one so it's just easier to see. So these, this is the Lang Tools rethreading set, which I think some people, rebrand and market. But you see how there's not much of a point on there? I mean, this is basically like a butt tap, so it's not really going to grab the threads if you need to rethread something that's chowdered near the end. And I know he was saying that for him, He doesn't often use this because this is a little too aggressive when it cuts the threads. So he'll usually just go ahead and use a tap or a die to rethread things. Because he said when he uses this, sometimes he'll notice there's a little more slop in there after he uses it. But he did say he likes these thread restorer tools. So that's just something, you know, if anybody wants to comment that's used this kit. Today what I did is I did go ahead and put the thermostat in, and we're all set with that. I went ahead and put the water pump in, so we're good there. And then once I got those two things done, I looked at the Dieselsite stuff again, and I think I am going to go ahead and give this a try. I'm not a huge fan of aftermarket stuff, but as I'm working on the truck today, you know, there's a little bit of rust forming in the engine because it's been, you know, open for like a week or so, and it just couldn't hurt after I'm doing all this work to the cooling system to have that filter, and if it doesn't work, I'll just take it out. No big deal. One last thing I forgot to mention was I did replace this piece of hose in here too, this coolant hose, which was a bit of a bear to do. But what I did is I put the two clamps on first, you know, after struggling with it for too long, put the two clamps on the metal pipe first, put the hose on, the cooling hose on, and then brought the clamps back down. Hey guys, it's Sunday afternoon, and I swore I wasn't gonna do anything with the truck today. You need to take some time off so you don't burn yourself out. But I'm still out here thinking about this, and I just wanted to show you one decision I made about 5 minutes ago. What I did today is I just came out and I just loosely hooked up the lines, you know, that would be there for the coolant filter, and I know these lines could be routed down behind the motor, and you know, I did the zip tie mod to see how they look if you zip tied them, and in the real installation I would probably put another piece of heater hose around there to keep from chafing. Well, I love the idea of the extra insurance, but just watching, you know, what's going to end up being, let's say 3 feet, let's say another 6 to 7 feet of heater hose draped across the back of the motor. You know, you got your two fittings here, your two fittings there. Things can happen. And I also imagined checking my power steering fluid, which I would have to go over through here to get to. And I would be, I don't want to say cursing, you know, I wouldn't be pleased. I'm not going to do this. And again, it's nothing about Dieselsite, because I really do love the concept. But I just can't, no matter how neatly I do it, this is why I don't do aftermarket stuff, is I don't want to add complexity. I've got, you know, angst about installing one because I don't want the lines to chafe and cause more trouble, but I've also got angst because I think it would be so awesome to filter that junk out of there. In the end, I just need to do the coolant flush and change more often, so this is a non-issue. Okay guys, well we got her out, and I don't know how much of it I put in the video, but I was prying the cover off very carefully. I didn't want to bend it, and I got around most of it, and all of a sudden the whole thing just came loose and it just flopped right down below the engine. You know, luckily I had a tray there to catch oil, which it landed perfectly in, and some cardboard for drips, but it was a little bit of a surprise at the end there. So again, I think I'm the original, I know I'm the original owner of this truck. I know I never paid anybody to do any work on the timing cover gasket. So, you know, this has definitely got sealant that was, I really don't think there was any chance whatsoever that, you know, whatever they were using around here was leaking. So whatever leak was going on, definitely had to have been the front main seal, you know, or the seal behind. But I mean, that thing was stuck on there good, and I was thinking about using the gasket to seal it again, but boy, they really did a nice job with whatever this white stuff is. So that's where we are. The killer dowel pin is right over here, and this is a 2002. Let me zoom in for you guys. Alright guys, I want to take a few minutes and talk about the Diller cowl pin. Alright guys, I want to take a few minutes here and talk about the killer dowel pin here. And I am by no means an expert on Cummins history, but I can tell you that with this motor, some of the earlier ones, this dowel pin here, which I think I talked about earlier in the video, would basically walk out and then fall down into the gear below, which spins counterclockwise, gets shoved into the timing cover here, and crack it open and lead to a very expensive repair. So I know I looked at this before and said it didn't move, I don't see any worries, I'm just going to let it be. That's still where I am, but I actually have, you know, some more evidence as to why I should just let it be. So I was just watching a video by a guy named Your Beekeeper. I'll put a link to his video in the description. So he was doing this on his truck, and he, you know, said his killer dowel pin hadn't moved, and he wasn't really sure why. So he called somebody, I don't remember who, and they basically said that you know, eventually Cummins did figure out what was going on and make some changes. So according to that video, if your timing case has gray silicone, that means that they did the repair and it's nothing to worry about. However, you know, verify. You know, it's all conjecture and hearsay until you talk to somebody that does this for a living, or, you know, have some way to prove it. So, you know, even what I'm saying here could just be pure conjecture and hearsay. But in the Beekeeper video, you know, he said that on his truck, and mine as well, if you look here, there is ever so slight, there we go, there's ever so slight of a little ridge at the end of this dowel pin hole. See if I can do this without getting my fingers in the way. So hopefully you're seeing that I'm catching something, or you may see a little bit of a indentation on the edge of the casting. I don't know, but there's something I'm catching. That's really what I want you to see here, is I'm catching. So again, my truck is a 2002, so I think by the time they got around to building mine, they had this figured out and they took care of it. But they still did leave us with that lift pump issue that I'm sure many of you guys know about. But killer dowel pin, at least for my truck, seems like a non-issue. And one thing I do want to just ask any guys that do this for a living is a lot of the killer dowel pin fixes talk about using, you know, red thread locker on this bolt right here. And as I was, you know, staying up late last night, getting a little anxious about this dowel pin, you know, I did some research on red thread locker, and I know you need to use heat. And basically what I'll see guys do to get bolts out with red thread locker is put a propane torch on them for, you know, basically a minute to a minute and a half. And this is all aluminum, and I just couldn't imagine, you know, putting a propane torch against this for a minute to a minute and a half without, you know, either melting the gasket behind, which I guess if you were doing that repair wouldn't make a difference anyways, or melting the aluminum. You know, that's a lot of heat. So I guess I just was curious if any guys have ever had to take one of these out, you know, with red thread locker on it, because either the bolt doesn't come out, you hit it with a minute to a minute and a half's worth of heat, or, you know, heaven forbid, then you get the bolt to snap. You know, it's a pretty awkward spot to work and to get torque on, and you just screwed yourself some more. So again, I'm just curious, you know, I know everybody says use red thread locker to put them in. I'm just curious if blue would be a better choice, or if there's a different material that's a better choice. Because it seems like it's going to kick you in the butt later on in life if you dump red thread locker. All right, and then if anybody's into that type of thing, there is the crankshaft. There's a smudge in the middle. I did run my finger before I filmed, but if you take a look at that, you know, it doesn't really look that bad to me. There's like a quarter-inch wide spot where the seal has definitely polished off the crankshaft. But it looks like a crankshaft. I don't know what else to say. And then this is the timing cover, which I think I got off without doing too much damage. I tried to take my time because this seemed like a case where a stitch in time saves a leak down, you know, in the future. One thing I do want to just mention is I watched a video by V-Belt and Son, and I believe Thoroughbred Diesel mentioned this as well. Although when Thoroughbred did a video on this stuff, they just used sealant around the cover. But part number 3918673 for Cummins, which is the 12-valve gasket, actually does fit the 24-valve cover. So again, I'm not really sure what I'm going to do yet, but I just wanted to show you that it does fit. And this gasket, I don't know what it's made of, but it's a very thick paper, almost metallic like, but it's got a bump on it, which it'll only go on one way. And I think the bump, you know, the moundy part goes away from the block. But, you know, I gotta say that this looks, I mean, it was really well sealed. I mean, look at how nice, you know, it's got a little bit on the inside, but it didn't, you know, didn't leave BBs. It's got a nice thick bead all the way. I mean, they really knocked it out of the park when they sealed that, and I don't know, hopefully we'll figure out how to do that ourselves. So there is what the seal looks like, which I don't really see any major damage, you know, on that seal. It looks perfectly normal. But there was definitely a ton of oil underneath the motor. You know, there's the other side of the seal. And I mean, there's definitely oil on the inside of it. I don't know if you guys can see in there. You know, there's definitely oil on the inside of it, but it looks pretty good. So, you know, I wasn't really going to go behind the timing gears. But, you know, I don't know if I found a smoking gun yet. Besides just the wear around the crankshaft there. I mean, maybe that's just something that happens with these trucks is, or maybe all cars, is that front crankcase seal eventually wears out. Or it wears, you know, below the crankshaft, and it's just enough that it's not a fast leak, but a little bit of leak just leaks for a long time. So I just hit the crankshaft with a little bit of brake clean just for a better view of what's going on. So the seal would have been installed, you know, into the cover. The cover would have been put on top, and I assume the thicker part of the seal would have been right around here, and then the thinner part would have been here where it's polished. But there's really not much of a lip, if any lip. I'll drag the pick across that for you guys. I mean, I'm not really, you know, I can feel the difference of texture right here. But, anyways, that's just, that's what it looks like, if anybody's curious. All right, guys, I just got back from talking with a heavy equipment mechanic, heavy duty mechanic. And I just wanted to make some notes here. And I want to say again that this isn't a tutorial. I'm not sure if my notes only apply to the heavy duty versions of the Cummins 24 valve. But let me just go over a few things I learned. And, you know, you guys can choose whether you want to use them or not. And I literally hold, you know, I can't tell you if they're right or wrong. These are just things I just heard that make sense. So the first thing was looking at this gasket or the seal, and he said, you see how it's, you know, there's no flexibility in this seal. So this seal is shot. I mean, it's literally turned into like leather. And the other thing he said was if the seal was still good, it would have more of a V to it, you know, so it would be squeezing down on the shaft. So if you look at the side there, you know, you can see there's some, you know, brownness there. That's where the oil was getting by. So this seal definitely was bad. So I'm kind of happy to hear that, because I was afraid I did all this work for nothing. He said given the choice, he would take the gasket every time as opposed to straight RTV. You know, when I said I was pretty impressed by the sealing job, he said that he was as well. But what he recommends, where did I put that gasket? So what he recommends with this gasket, and first off, I did spill some oil on it before when I was comparing the size, and he said I can just take some brake clean and spray that on there. That's not going to hurt anything. But then he said what he recommends is using gray RTV and, you know, putting, you know, running it through your fingers on both sides of the gasket, basically the same height as the you know, the ridge on the gasket, all the way around. And then you wait for it to start to harden, you know, so you touch your finger to it like every 5 minutes. And he said usually within 15 minutes or so, you know, you'll go to touch it with your finger and your finger won't stick, and that's when you put it on the truck. And, you know, both sides of the gasket get, you know, the gray RTV. He did ask me if I separated the bolts, at which point I pretty much had a heart attack and said no, I didn't. But I think it wasn't about putting the bolts back in the same holes as it was knowing where the long ones and the short ones go. So, you know, so I didn't. But what I might do is go through the, you know, put this on finger tight and put all the bolts back on and mark the outside of the gasket, which ones are long, which ones are short. And that probably would have been smarter to do when I was taking it off. And then, you know, using a permanent marker or something, or, you know, or crayon, write, you know, a long, short, and then where the two studs go. So that way when I put everything back together, you know, you can get it back together quickly when the RTV is still, you know, before it sets. Because you said that's a lot of bolts, and you know, you have to keep moving when you get to that part. Tightening, he did say that he recommends, you know, you put them all on, you know, snug, and then when you go to do the torquing, you start in the middle, you know, do 2 here in the middle, 2 here, 2 back here. You know, you basically work from the middle out, going back and forth to torque it down. That makes sense. And the other thing he recommended, which I think I zoned out a little bit when he was saying it, but I think he said, you know, before I put the bolts back in, to put like a little pea-sized dollop of RTV on the bolts, and then put them in, because what you want to happen is, you know, like these little rings of RTV. You know, it's not so much for sealing the threads, he said, but he said that way if something comes up the threads of the bolts, this little bit will keep it from coming through the cover. Or I think he did say, and I don't know if this is true for the you know, the Dodge Cummins, but I guess in the commercial Cummins, some of those long bolts are through holes. So by having the sealant, you'll keep the, you know, the coolant and the oil from mixing. So again, I'm pretty sure, you know, he took a little screwdriver like this and said, you can just put some on a screwdriver and put a dollop on your bolts before you screw them down. Because I definitely did notice some of the bolts did have RTV on them. And I guess if I was paying better attention, I would have remembered that where that was. But I'll do that for them all, and you know, hopefully prevent mixing coolant and oil, because that's always a good thing. So that was pretty much it. And then, you know, he did say use the red Loctite for this one here, which I think he said has something like a 1500 psi tensile strength. And I kind of jokingly said, oh, so it's like super glue, but I think that was basically the concept, is you're super gluing this one in here and you're more sealing this one in here. So, you know, we'll see what I have when I get to it. But the next phase for me is just to, you know, I think I've said this before in the video, just take a deep breath, clean everything out. You know, he was happy to see I didn't bend the head cover. Or not the head cover, the you know, the timing case cover, the gear case cover, you know, so that was good. So, you know, we'll just take a chill pill, clean everything here off good, clean everything on the block off good, on the motor off good, and then, you know, I won't rush through any of this part. This to me is the most stressful part, because, you know, if I do something wrong, I'm going to have to go all the way back in the motor, and we don't want to do that. But I think I've got all the info I can get, so now it's up to me to just, you know, take my time and get her done. Okay, guys, so today was cleaning day, and I, you know, I cleaned off this is all aluminum here, this part of the block. You have to be very gentle with this, the timing cover, timing case. You have to be very gentle with this. And I do just want to mention, I'm not sure if you can see much, but initially I tried to take a chisel and bang it in the case here. And I really didn't do, you know, any damage, but I tried to take this guy in and get it between the two, and you could really mess up this aluminum pretty quickly doing that. And again, I'm not saying this is the way, you know, maybe that's perfectly fine to do, but what I ended up doing is I got this, it's an indexing pry bar, so you can put it however you want, and I just found a spot where I could lean it against the case and catch a corner of the cover and just kind of pry it. But of course you don't want to just go animal on one spot, you know, you want to kind of work at it a bit. But I just want to caution you, I guess, just against grabbing, you know, a chisel and going at it, because you can really, you know, you can really ding that up pretty quickly. So again, I'm not saying this is the right and that's the wrong. I'm just saying be careful whichever way you use. The other thing I did is at the end, after so as I was I use this tool here from Lyle to scrape, which is a carbide scraper, and I pushed it against hard, and I would only drag, once I was sure I was parallel to the surface, and I'd use that to get the majority of the junk off. And then I would use this Scotch Bright Green, which I got at Lowe's, to scrape the rest off. And as I was doing all this, I kept the shop vac on and very close by to catch as much of the dust I could, or if anything fell in before it made a mess. And the other thing I think I did wrong, I had about a quarter can of brake clean, and I hosed off all these gears with that quarter can of brake clean. And now you can see some of these gears are completely dry. So it was only quarter can. We're going to say everything's going to be okay. It's open, everything's going to dissolve, but don't go spraying brake clean, you know, don't go spraying 5 cans of brake clean in here until you're sure that's the right idea. And I'm really not sure that was the right idea. There's 5 gallons of oil in here, 4 gallons of oil, 4 and change. It's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine, John. It's gonna be fine. I cleaned off the crankshaft there. You can see how nice that came out. I cleaned off a little thingy around. So I'm ready to put the sleeve on if I wanted to. Okay, and then to clean off the timing cover, I put a brand new razor blade on this thing, and I held it parallel. Can you see me? Where are you? I held it parallel, got the heavy gasket off, you know, very carefully. I didn't go animalistic. I just put it on, and long, easy, you know, like it only took 2 or 3 strokes to get most of the gasket, except for where I didn't hold it parallel. And then once I got it down to less of the gasket, I used this tool here, which is a cordless die grinder. I put it on setting 1, which I think is like 5,000 RPMs. And then, you know, cleaning the top part was easy, but getting it into these little nooks and crannies, you know, whichever way it was going, I could clean out here. Then I had to go to the other side to clean out that side. And again, 5,000 RPMs, and in a perfect world, I would have liked to have had a finer brush than this one. It really doesn't look too bad. You know, I went over it with this guy after everything was done. But for the most part, the work was done by this, you know, this little brush here. Popped out the old seal. I popped it back this way, because you're supposed to, as far as I know, you're supposed to push seals back the same way they went in. I'm assuming there might be a little bit of a taper on this, so that makes sense to me, but again, this is my first time for all this stuff. So this is not a tutorial, this is just for fun. And to get guys who know what they're doing to tell me I'm silly or to give me pointers, hint hint. And then the other side here, I did take the wire brush, and I got a little bit of rust going here, so I wire brushed the rust as much as I could, and I am going to get, I think that's a gloss black. I am going to get some gloss black engine enamel and see if I can just paint the cover. Again, I don't know how good a job I can do because it's got 14 years of caked on grease. I mean, I know I could do a great job, but I really just want to cover where the rust has started so that it doesn't get worse. So, the next time we hit this, it's going to take me a couple days to paint this and let it dry. So the next time we hit this, we'll be all set to first put the repair sleeve on, put the seal in, the crankcase seal there, and then go ahead and put the timing cover back on, and do that all with no rush whatsoever, so that so we don't make any mistakes. And then the last thing I just wanted to touch on was your PPE, and just with those wire attachments on the grinders, die grinders, even when I'm wearing cleaning carburetors and spraying carb cleaner, you never know where it's going to come out. So I got this shield over the winter, which is really nice. So I just wanted to show you guys this. It's a great way to keep junk out of your eyes. And then I do have safety glasses which have cheater lenses in them underneath, and then also some good earplugs and a respirator. And I know it seems like a lot of people make fun of guys that wear the protective equipment, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. So that's what we do. All right, we'll see you soon, guys. Bye-bye. All right, guys, it's a new day, and last night, just after dark, I brought a couple flashlights outside, and I put 3 light coats on this cover. Made sure to put some paint where the seal goes so I don't mess that up. So the cover is all set. It just might, I might leave it for a few days to let the paint cure and harden. One thing I do want to say is I left the cover flat on the ground because I didn't want to get any paint on the inside of the cover. There was one video I watched, and I forget who it was with. It might have been with South Main, where they bought a part, like an oil pan or something, with a coat of paint on it from the manufacturer, and after a while the paint came off. So I would just be very careful not to paint anything that's going to come in contact with motor oil, and be left in the engine, so if the paint falls off, it screws things up. But got this painted. The next thing is I did speak with Oversight, and spraying brake clean inside of an engine is not a good idea. I was told that the best thing to do is, if you need to clean something off, spray the brake clean on a rag and then wipe down whatever you need to clean. So the recommended solution for that was to get some WD-40 and just spray it on all the gears so the gears don't start rusting. So the thing was exposed for probably 3 to 4 hours, if I had to guess. I did get some WD on it last night. I doused it. The only flash rust I saw was a little bit of flash rust on this gear right here. I took a Scotch-Brite, a very mild Scotch-Brite, and rubbed it off and hit it with a little more WD, so I think we're okay. I was told that the best thing to do is, once the repair is completed, fairly soon thereafter, change the oil, so any junk, that got inside the engine, you can get rid of. And, the other thing was, put some rags around the outside, so that the junk doesn't fall in the engine. And I want to say, in my own defense, I did bring some tin foil out, and I was gonna try to get it in. It's a pretty tight tolerance there. So sometimes you guys will hear me saying I don't like to rush. You know, that did occur to me, but I didn't do anything about it. And just as I was looking at this box, or the cardboard from the gasket, a few strips of this cardboard might have worked perfectly to wedge up there. I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty sure everything's going to be okay. It's not like I dropped silicone in there, just a little bit of the Scotch-Brite grit fell into the motor. The oil filter will catch it. It's going to be fine. And then I do just want to show you guys in the manual where it talks about the crankshaft oil seal. You know, it says remove the gear cover to housing bolts and gently pry the cover away from the housing, taking care not to mar the gasket surface. So gently prying, keyword there on gently, is definitely the way to go when you're removing the timing cover.